The workers weren't looking for a city. They came to find the remains of a small funerary temple, a foundation, maybe some scattered stone, something modest, something expected. The land between the Valley of the Kings and the temple complexes of Luxor had been studied for over 150 years. Every major survey said the same thing. This stretch of desert was empty. Checked. Done. There was nothing left to find here. Every scholar, every expedition, every aerial survey had passed over this ground and reached the same conclusion. They were all wrong. Think about that. They started digging in September 2020. Within days, something appeared at the edge of a trowel. Not a stone, not a tile. A mud brick made from Nile silt, formed by hand, dried in the sun exactly as bricks had been made here for thousands of years. Then another brick, then a wall, then another wall running parallel to the first, perfectly straight, perfectly preserved, as if someone had buried it last week and the desert had simply forgotten to tell anyone. No one said anything for a moment. They just looked. By the end of the first month, the wall had become a street. The street had become a block. The block had become a district. And what had started as a routine excavation became something no one could explain. A full urban settlement, intact, sealed, hidden beneath less than 2 meters of sand. Most people have never heard of what they found here. The city stretched outward in every direction. Walls standing nearly 3 meters high. Doorways still framing their original thresholds. Floors that hadn't been touched since the 18th dynasty. Room after room after room. Not collapsed, not burned, not robbed, simply left. As if the people who lived here had walked out one morning and never came back. Archaeologists realized they were walking through a place no one was supposed to find intact. The walls were still standing. The doors were sealed. No one understood why. Would you walk through it? Here's the thing that made this place different from every other find in this region. Other sites give you tombs. They give you the dead, the carefully arranged dead, surrounded by objects chosen to represent an ideal version of life, selected and staged to communicate status and belief. What this city gave was the opposite. It gave the actual version, the real version. A butcher's jar with his name on it. A man named Kai, the date of preparation, and the exact weight of the meat, recorded because someone had to account for every kilogram that entered the royal supply chain. Bread ovens with charcoal still inside. Loom weights scattered across a weaving room floor, left mid-task, as if the weaver stepped away to answer a question and never returned. A child's clay toy near a doorway. Bone needles worn smooth from years of use. Cosmetic residue at the bottom of small ceramic cups, oils, and pigments, still chemically intact after 3,000 years in dry air. This was not a monument to eternity. This was a Tuesday morning. But that wasn't the strange part. The city covered an enormous area, divided into distinct zones, separated by internal walls. The southern section held the bakeries and kitchens, massive communal facilities that could feed hundreds of workers and officials. The northern quarter was industrial, workshops, casting molds, raw material storage. Between them ran a network of streets, narrow enough to feel intimate, organized enough to feel planned. And the zigzag walls. And this is where everything changes. Running along the main corridors, the outer facades of some buildings followed a repeated angular pattern, not straight lines, not curves, but sharp repeated zigzags, like a compressed wave. This form was almost unknown in Egyptian domestic architecture of this period. Builders used it deliberately. It reinforced the structures against desert winds. It created natural niches along the exterior for storage or shade. And it gave the city a visual rhythm unlike anything else found from this era, a signature, almost embedded in the clay itself. No other city in Egypt looked like this. Walk into the industrial quarter, and the scale becomes difficult to process. Jewelers' workshops sat alongside faience kilns and glassworking stations. Casting molds for amulets and small divine figures lay in stacks, hundreds of them, organized by type and size, waiting for the next production run that never came. Some molds still had residue inside, traces of copper, traces of gold. On the walls and floors, official seals pressed into clay identified the goods, the recipients, and the authority under which they were made. Every object that left this quarter was accounted for. Everything here was made for the palace. Not traded, not sold. Produced under royal commission and shipped directly to the residences nearby. Think about what that means. This wasn't a market town or a civilian settlement. It was a state manufacturing complex, a city-sized workshop producing luxury goods, ritual objects, and administrative supplies for one of the wealthiest courts in the ancient world. Every worker, every baker, every jeweler here was on the payroll of the pharaoh, and none of them chose to leave. They were ordered to. And almost no one outside this excavation knows what was found inside its walls. The seal impressions left no doubt about who built this. They bore the name Amenhotep III, the pharaoh who ruled Egypt at what historians consider the absolute apex of its power. Under his reign, tribute flowed in from Nubia, Canaan, and the Aegean. His diplomats corresponded with kings across the Near East. He built more than almost any ruler before or after him. And at some point during those 4 decades, he ordered this city constructed a fully operational administrative and production hub on the west bank of the Nile, adjacent to his mortuary, temple, and palace complexes. The city didn't have a name that survived, but it had a function. It was the engine beneath the surface of the empire. And then someone switched it off. Would you have kept digging? Because this is the point where the excavation stopped feeling straightforward. In one of the residential buildings, beneath the hardened floor of what had been a living space, archaeologists found human remains. Not in a tomb, not in a designated burial area. Beneath a floor, the body had been placed in an unusual position, arms at the sides, knees pressed tightly together, bound. The burial did not follow any established Egyptian funerary custom of this period. It was not ceremonial. It was not symbolic in any recognizable way. No one moved. The analysis continued in a neighboring quarter. In another house, also beneath the floor, cattle bones. Large animals, carefully placed, not butchered, not discarded. Buried whole, beneath living space. No precedent for this exists in the documented record of New Kingdom settlements. Whether these were protective rituals, emergency responses to some crisis, or evidence of something that has no surviving explanation, researchers still don't have an answer. The bones have been analyzed. The soil has been sampled. The position of the remains has been documented from every angle. The city has not explained itself on this point. Amenhotep III died after nearly 4 decades of rule. His son inherited the throne and then proceeded to dismantle everything his father had built, starting with the gods. The new pharaoh, who took the name Akhenaten, declared that Egypt would now worship one deity only, the solar disk. Every temple to every other god was closed. Every priesthood was disbanded. The enormous religious and economic infrastructure that had sustained cities like this one, built on the backs of traditional cults, administered by officials tied to those cults, funded by ritual calendars that hadn't changed in centuries, collapsed almost overnight. It was not a gradual reform. It was a deliberate rupture. And then the order came. Leave. Not gradually. Not through decline. An administrative decision, issued from the new capital at Amarna, emptied this city in what appears to have been a single coordinated movement. The workers packed what they could carry. The officials took their records. The jewelers left their molds. The bakers left their ovens. The weavers left their weights on the floor. The thresholds were sealed. Official stamps pressed into clay marked the entrances to public buildings, not as ruins, not as condemned structures, but as closed facilities awaiting future use. The city was not abandoned. It was suspended, placed into a kind of administrative sleep by people who apparently believed it would one day be opened again. It wasn't. No one came back to open it. No one came back to destroy it. No one even came back to take the gold still sitting in the workshops. They just left it sealed and walked away. Akhenaten's reign ended. His successors tried to undo what he had done. A young king named Tutankhamun, still a child when he took the throne, began the process of restoration. Historical evidence suggests he intended to use this Western Bank area as a base for returning Egypt to its traditional order. Traces of his short reign appear in this district. There are signs that work began here, that some preparation was made. But he died before the city could be reopened. He was approximately 18 to 20 years old. After that, no one came back. Not to loot it, not to rebuild it, not even to dismantle it for raw materials, which was standard practice across Egypt whenever an old building fell out of use. The mud bricks, the timber, the copper tools, all of it should have been taken and reused within a generation. Instead, the city sat undisturbed. The sand moved in slowly, season by season, covering the streets, filling the doorways, pressing against the zigzag walls. And then, nothing. For 3,000 years, what kept it safe may have been the same thing that killed it. A city associated with the old religious order, the order that Akhenaten tried to erase, carried a complicated status in the generations that followed. It wasn't simply abandoned. It was politically inconvenient, tied to a court and a set of beliefs that the new administration was simultaneously rehabilitating and distancing itself from. The city may have become untouchable, not sacred, not cursed, but simply too entangled in a history that no one wanted to revisit. They could have quarried it. They decided not to. They could have built over it. They walked around it. Instead, no one built over it. No one wrote about where it was. It dropped out of memory the way places sometimes do, not through catastrophe but through silence. And that silence is exactly what preserved it. Today, the excavation covers only a fraction of the total site. What has been uncovered is roughly one section of what is almost certainly a much larger urban area. Ground-penetrating surveys suggest structures extending well beyond the current dig boundaries. Rooms, corridors, entire districts that have not been touched. The teams working here estimate that years of excavation remain ahead before the full outline of the city can even be mapped. What would you think if an entire city appeared beneath the sand and no one had known it was there? The sealed thresholds are still there, still stamped with official marks from a government that ceased to exist 3,000 years ago, still waiting, in a certain sense, for someone with the authority to open them. The zigzag walls are still standing, somewhere beneath the surface, in the quarters that haven't been reached yet. There may be archives, administrative records, diplomatic correspondence, documents that could answer questions about this period, one of the most turbulent and least understood in Egyptian history. The reign of Amenhotep III, the revolution of Akhenaten, the brief attempt at restoration under Tutankhamun. These decades reshaped the ancient world. And the answers, if they survived, might be sitting in a sealed room 2 meters below ground in Luxor. Or there may be more rooms like the one with the body under the floor. More things the city doesn't want to explain. The sand is still there. The seals are still intact. Most of the city is still buried beneath the desert. Still sealed. Still waiting.